Hey guys, what's up? It's JTalk, and I know this is probably going to get me a lot of flack for making this video. I'm probably going to have to deal with a lot of people in the comments who think the complete opposite, but this is something that I really want to discuss because I don't see a whole lot of people talking about this a whole lot, at least on YouTube. Story-driven games. I think they are the future. I think they are really where the gaming industry is going to end up in the next 10 years or so. And you may say, oh, you're just saying this, Jay, because, really great story-driven games have come out lately, such as BioShock and The Last of Us and The Walking Dead. And you are right, those are great story-driven games, but I think this is actually a progressive shift that's been happening since way back at the early days of gaming with, the 8-bit series and the Odyssey and all those, grandfathers of modern gaming. Because you see, gaming back then was completely different than it is today. If you're a 30-something male or female gamer who's been gaming since those early days, you know that gaming is completely different. Back then, when you have such a limited canvas to paint this story you want to tell on, you don't really try for that. You really just go for the difficulty. The difficulty was what kept players constantly coming back and would really slow their progression, because you couldn't exactly make huge games back on those early systems. They couldn't be 10 hours plus. The only way you could make them 10 hours plus is if you actually make the game very difficult to complete. And as far as story goes, it was just very simple concepts. It was like Mario, you're a guy who has to save a princess from a monster. Very simple concept. There you go. That's your reason to keep going. And today, technology has advanced to a level where we can now tell much more in-depth stories because we have pre-rendered cutscenes, we have 3D graphics and crazy power. And so because today the technology has advanced so much, why are we going to be making more story-driven games? Because the demographic for games has changed drastically in the last, I would say, even just 10 years. For example, I am 19 years old. When I was a kid, what games did I play? What games did my friends play? I had a PlayStation 1. I played Crash Bandicoot. When I went to my cousin's house, we played Double Dragon. When I went to my friend's house, we played Mario 64 and Mario Kart. Those games are very reflective of the kind of people who were playing games at that time. It was generally younger audiences. Not all the time, but generally younger audiences. Today, what do kids who are just younger than that, like 6 or 7 years old, what do they like to play? They like to play Call of Duty. They like to play Battlefield. They like to play games that are much intended for an older audience than they are. And the reason these big popular games are getting more adult-oriented nowadays is because developers and publishers, they all know gamers are growing up. Gamers are getting older, and as you get older, you tend to lose that competitive spirit you had when you were 12 years old. Perhaps to better put into perspective what it is I'm trying to say with all this is quote David Cage, the CEO of Quantic Dream, guys behind Heavy Rain and the new Beyond Two Souls. He did a speech at this year's DICE 2013 called 9 Reasons Why Gaming Needs to Grow Up. And there's this specific quote: "Games should focus on a journey rather than a challenge. By the time you turn off your console, the game will leave an imprint. You will think about what you've seen. That's what every creative medium should strive to achieve." Now, I know a quote like that is going to stir up a lot of controversy as to whether or not it's really a correct analysis of the future of games, but you have to admit that he is at least partially correct. This is because games they'll always have the Call of Duty, the Battlefield, the Halo, the League of Legends, whatever your poison is, but there needs to be more games that appeal to more than just the child, the teenager, the young adult, things that can appeal to the older audiences of games who don't really want to get mad playing Call of Duty and dealing with online people. They just want to play a relatively easy to digest, very memorable, story-driven experience. And the fact that in such a short period of time, The Walking Dead, the BioShock Infinite, and The Last of Us have all been critically acclaimed, sold extremely well, and are extremely desired by gamers, this proves to me that we will be seeing more of this in the future. Because I think if we really want gaming to be as respected as films and movies and things like that, we need to start moving in this direction. And I think that is really the natural progression of any creative medium. The thing about story-driven games is that a lot of the hardcore competitive gamer will often just kind of turn up their noses to the idea. Like The Walking Dead, how it's not like a quote-unquote real game because you can't exactly lose, and it's really just a constant moving forward. It's really difficult to actually screw up, and even if you do, you just start like right back where you just were, so there's not really much of a penalty. But I think in the new idea of games, A game doesn't have to necessarily be difficult. It doesn't have to have a huge challenge to really be a game. To be a game, to me, it needs to be interactive. Like, look at the old point-and-click adventure games. They weren't exactly difficult unless you were, like, just clicking around the screen trying to figure out what it is you're supposed to do. But they were still interactive, and I think interactivity, more than difficulty, defines what is a game. So, in conclusion, why do I think story-driven games are the future? Because gamers, their desires are changing, the mindsets of the gamer is changing, the demographic is changing, and the possibilities. The big thing is the possibilities are changing. And this is solidified by the fact that gamers are proving with their wallets and voting with their money as to why they want more story-driven games. We want the mature, dark stories of stuff like The Last of Us. We want the crazy worlds of BioShock. We want the very deep emotional stories of Walking Dead, and we can also go back to some of our childhood favorites like Final Fantasy and Knights of the Old Republic and still enjoy them despite how dated they look, purely because the stories are so well written. Now, of course, I don't think that every game in the future needs to be story-driven. We need to have the competitive Twitch gaming. We need to have the indie scene. There needs to be variety. But story-driven games, I think, are going to become the new thing. They're going to become the like what first-person shooters are today. I think in 10 years, story-driven games are going to be that. That's all just my little spiel on the subject. With all these great story-driven games coming out lately and how well they're selling, that's the way I see it coming out. That's the way I see the gaming industry going. But I want to know other people's thoughts. Do you think story-driven games are going to become the main thing in a number of years? And what are some of your favorite story-driven games? Did you like The Last of Us or BioShock or Dead Space or whatever games have come out recently with at least somewhat decent stories? But anyway, I gotta take off. I gotta play some Last of Us multiplayer and work on Fallout 3 for a little bit. So thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.